Hi there, welcome to my support 8.19 tier list for League of Legends. Hopefully you can use this tier list as a guide in what to use in solo queue. Anything on this list is viable in Iron/Bronze, and as you get higher ELO, more and more champions become less and less viable, so use this tier list as a reference to kind of where you are. I would recommend anything in the tier A for Plat and above. Anything below that, you're probably putting yourself at severe hindrance unless you genuinely enjoy playing the champion a lot. Now, we'll start off with the C tier. I've added a few champions that you guys have been interested in, and honestly, mainly dump them into the C tier. Some of them get some YouTube comments like saying, "Oh, Bizzleberry, what do you think about Ivan and Cyan and?" They're champions that are very, very, very rarely played at the moment, and I honestly wouldn't recommend them at all. But if you are fond of the champion in Bronze, you can maybe make it work. So there you go: Zoe, Maokai, Malzahar, Tarek, Nautilus, Tahm Kench, Cyan, and Ivan. And interesting about Tahm Kench as well, they've nerfed his maximum HP by a considerable amount. I believe it's 70 HP, level 1. So yeah, he's now even squishier. He's definitely being pushed in towards that top lane role, which I don't agree with, but hey, read please. Move up to tier B. Lulu, Vel'Koz, Xerath, Zilean, Shen, Veigar, Karma, Annie, Nunu, Fiddlesticks, Lux, and Anivia. You have a couple of traditional supports there that you may see in a couple of your games every now and then. The main one there being Lulu. Currently, in my opinion, she doesn't really fit the current meta that's happening with AD carries right now. There's a lot more of the champions like Jhin and Lucian. Those sort of champions being played on bot side, and even Draven as well is pretty popular still. Lulu doesn't really help out too much with the AD capability there. She's much better suited with someone that can use Ardent Sensor and needs a lot more protection. She can be okay against assassins with her polymorph, but in terms of that, everything that she does is fairly on the weaker scale. Her ult can be fairly useful, but once again, it's usually to protect a hypercarry that has no movement speed ability for themselves, and needs that extra little bit of help like a Vayne or a Kog'Maw. So Vayne, it has been slightly picked a little bit more since the Vayne buff last patch, but her play rate has seen a good deal of reduction from what I've seen, at least anyway. The first week, a lot of people were considering playing Vayne, and it's kind of fallen off a lot since then because people were reverting to the more OP picks such as the Jhin and the Lucian and the Draven. You've got a couple of AP non-traditional supports there. The Vel'Koz, the Xerath, the Zilean, and the Veigar, and even the Annie, and technically the Nunu, and even the Anivia. Now they all bring something a little bit in regards to CC into the lane. CC is always a big thumbs up when you're considering playing as support, which makes these AP usually played in mid viable as support. One of the hard times I've had thinking about where to place is the Xerath, either in tier B or tier A. I think I'm settling into tier A because I can't quite personally recommend it myself. But if you feel like a very, very good, or you find a champion very, very fun, and you seem very experienced on him, maybe you can probably push it to tier A. The base damages on these champions are fairly decent, but you need kills and you need to make sure that you are winning the lane consistently to be able to get any sort of value from those sort of champions. With the exception being maybe in that list is Fiddlesticks. Fiddlesticks doesn't necessarily need kills. He still has a really annoying CC. Kills just obviously definitely does help. But Fiddlesticks has basically been falling off so much because he's so squishy. And with the amount of burst that's coming out from these AD carries that haven't been nerfed, the Jhin, the Draven, he gets demolished extremely, extremely quickly if caught out even just for just a tiny second. And once you're down on low HP and Fiddle, and if there's lane issues as well, so you can't even drain life, then you're in a really, really bad time. And also you're generally like accidentally pushing the wave constantly as well with E, so it gives the enemy an easier opportunity to freeze the lane. Now, Annie's support has seen some play, and honestly it's still really bad as support. You're constantly relying on stun. You're very predictable when you're going to be using the stun. And the only surprise move you can make is flash ulti. And to do that every single flash cooldown, I mean, you could probably put any support champion on the list and say, hey, the champion's valuable because of flash plus ulti. But honestly, even then, it's not even really the case. She can do, when she gets ahead like any other champion, she does a decent amount of damage. But getting ahead in lane is super difficult as Annie. Very easy to harass. And as I said before, the only thing she has really going for her is flash, ulti, stun. You've got a couple of slightly more tankier picks here as well, with the Shen and the Nunu mainly being the ones sticking out the most. People keep asking me if I play Shen when I'm playing on Twitch, and when I'm streaming on Twitch, and the answer is no. I think he has potential to do okay against maybe Jhin to block a couple of auto attacks, and especially like the 4th shot. I think after like flash taunt, it's kind of a similar to Annie. Like flash taunt can be extremely good in lane, especially if you have a burst AD carry that can follow up quite easily on a squishy target. Say if you flash taunt a Nami and you've got a Jhin on your side, the target is definitely going to have to use summoners to get out of that situation. But I personally feel like that's what you're constantly relying on. You're constantly relying on having to have flash taunt ready. So yeah, in my opinion, it's one of those champions where yes, it's viable if you can have flash on a 1 minute cooldown. But no, for me, I can't personally recommend it. And I think even the ulti, because you're not getting the levels and the gear, as soon as you ult in, you're just a squishy tank support. I personally feel like it's not viable. But hey, feel free to prove me wrong in the comment section below. Now the Nunu is receiving buffs this patch. He's receiving slightly more AP ratios on his E. I believe his consume, his Q is being reduced when you use it on an enemy champion. I've been really wanting to make this Nunu support work out. I personally don't think this change is going to do anything for him AP wise, and I'm kind of confused why they reduced the healing amount on champions, because he isn't played a lot, and why rework a whole champion if he's not going to be used much at all? It was probably better off that he is borderline OP rather than borderline useless, which I feel that's where he is right now. In lane you have to get a cheese kill. There's no doubt about it. Your snowball does extreme high amounts of damage level 1, about 150 damage AoE on the snowball when it blows up. But once you've done it a couple of times, the enemy knows exactly what you're doing and how to avoid it. So unless you can get a surprise kill from that and maybe snowball the lane from there, then I think you're in for a bad time. And once again, you can only take it if the enemy mid lane also has no easy escape as well. So something like against the Fizz or a LeBlanc, or someone that has an easy escape out of the lane from a gank, it just won't work. Right, now let's move up to the tier A. We've got some slightly beefier picks here. We've got the Bard, the Blitzcrank, the Poppy, Leona, Alistair, Janna, and Gragas. Now Gragas is a new one to put on the list. I'll go into that ever so slightly in a second. The Bard is still in a tough spot. Electrocute Bard, I've had a video on that recently on YouTube. Bard does extremely high amounts of damage. You can do a lot of nifty tricks, but you always put yourself in overextending positions, and he has one of the worst support item builds that in the game. He's extremely difficult to play as well, so if you're only just thinking about picking him up, don't expect to lose a few games before you start to get a grasp on how to use all of his different spells and abilities, and how to even get around the item build issue as well, because it's either standard support build with things like Redemption, or it's like an attack speed on hit build with Nash's Tooth and You can maybe even throw in a Wit's End there as well if you feel feeling funky, and Twin Shadows. It's kind of really like you kind of have to almost make it up on the spot. Bard has no efficient set build, in my opinion. I think he's kind of special in that kind of aspect. Blitzcrank will always be a kind of a mid-tier threat. There are champions that can deal with it, like the Morgana, and a couple of tank supports there as well, like Alistair and Leona can make the lane very stale, so there's nothing you can do apart from just not hook to make sure there's no opportunity for the enemy to go in. So he can be counterpicked extremely easily with Blitzcrank, but he is kind of a solo queue stomper in a sense up to probably about plat. So if you are thinking about cruising through bronze to low plat, then Blitzcrank is, if you're a good hooker, then it's totally viable. Poppy is a champion you should only take if the enemy has a lot of dashes on an enemy team, including on bot side as well. So if you're against something like an Alistair or a Gragas support or anyone with a dash, and then plus make sure the enemy team has 2 other dashes at least somewhere on the map as well, then it's when it can start to be viable. I will add that I personally have not played Poppy support at the moment. It hasn't really been something that I've had to consider taking, but if you end up in that situation, it might be worth it. And if you have experience playing Poppy, whether it's in the jungle or top side, it could be a decent support champion to transition into support. Leona, again, she's another good solo queue pops something up to maybe about low plat. Once you get higher than plat, it starts to become easier to counter and knowing how to handle her engages. And she's got less damage than the Alistair, but she has a little bit more of a get out of free card. You can basically throw your ulti and then you can decide, okay, is that a good ulti or not? Should I go in? Yes or no? Whereas with Alistair, is all in or nothing, which is another reason why he's an A and not higher. His laning phase presence for Alistair is very, very good, and he can snowball the lane extremely quickly. However, if he falls off, he's incredibly bad. And to be honest, in my opinion, mid-game onwards, he falls off extremely fast. After that first initial knock-up, if nothing else happens after that, you're in a lot of trouble. To be perfectly honest, you're in a lot of trouble. Now, Janna received a buff this patch. She received 10% more damage on conversion from movement speed to damage. So this is going to affect her laning phase mainly, only slightly. So she's going to do a tiny bit more damage for your laning phase. That's really about it. We're talking probably about 5 to 10 more damage per hit in laning phase, which is a reasonable amount to respect, especially if you're putting a few points in W. So it's going to benefit more if you're like the more aggressive type of Janna rather than the more passive type. If you're the more passive type of Janna, this change is going to affect you very, very little. If you're more of the W poking Janna with trying to weave in a couple of auto attacks as well, you'll see a lot more benefit with this change. Now the Gragas support I've just added, I feel like he is secretly decent. He has a lot of tools to both either engage and disengage at a safe distance. He has 2 interrupts for channel spells as well with his E and his Q. Once again, with the Poppy, I have not personally tried this yet in solo queue. I used to play a lot of Gragas back in Season 1, Season 2, mid lane AP Gragas. So I'm aware of the couple of sort of tricks that you can do with him, with like having your barrel down on the ground and then explosive cast your ulti into the queue kind of thing, to do a cheeky burst about the amount of damage there as well. So there are a couple of cheeky things you can do. Whether or not you go AP or tank is undecided, but I feel like with the amount of tools that he has, I mean, I've only seen him a couple of times in solo queue, so once again, if you can add to this in the comment section below and how you feel about Gragas support, I would love to know a little bit more. But from his kit and from what I have seen of him, I think there is potential, and the next 2 weeks I'll be streaming it. I'll be streaming some games with Gragas support, as well as with the other changes as well that have happened to support. I'll be playing some of those champions as well in solo queue as well, like the Janna I know some of you might be surprised about me saying I'm going to be streaming some Janna, but we'll be testing out some of the Janna changes and some of the other support changes that are happening in this patch as well. So we move up. We move up to S, tier 2. You've got Braum, Morgana, Brand, Sona, and Rakan. I'll just straight up from the bat. The Sona, I have actually been enjoying playing her. I know. After memeing about her for a couple of weeks, I actually feel like she's a nice, relaxing champion to play and has just about enough involvement to make it worth it. I know. A couple of people will be disappointed with me. A couple of people will be very happy with me. I'm not sure why, but I just find her incredibly relaxing. I think it also helps that I've got the Sona remote as well. The main problem is still, though, the crescendo, her ultimate is... It usually does rely on a flash ulti. However, the amount of other things that she brings in, particularly her healing, is pretty big. The one downside from her is that you kind of have to buy a tier, though, which does feel kind of crappy. I'm going to experiment, try not to buy tier, but it's going to be hard to path build around the tier. So I'm going to have to do some experimental builds, I think, to get a nice, clean Sona, S-rank Sona. I think it is possible. So keep updated for that, and you might see some YouTube videos coming out on her as well. You have to kind of go resolve secondaries because to make up the squishiness with the Chrysalis, if I said that correctly, the one that gives you extra HP and then bone plating. If you're not going to go tier, then I think you have to go cookies to make up the lack of mana regen coming in through the laning phase, and also buffs out your maximum mana a little bit there as well. So if you don't go tier, I feel like you have to go inspiration and cookies. But it's going to need more testing, but I've been actually enjoying playing her, and I think her heals are comparable to Nami. But her shields are okay too, but the main thing is the heals are actually pretty decent. So yeah, Sona, who would have thought that I would have her so high on my list? Some regular picks there, though, that I've had on my tier list for quite high up for a while. The Braum is a particularly popular tank support pick. He's probably the safest tank to pick in solo queue, even when you're blind. Very reliable champion to pick up. Not necessarily to power through the laning phase and carry unless you're with someone with Evolution, but you can make sure the game lasts longer. And if that's your kind of your team objective, maybe, like you got a Casterton maybe that needs to get to level 16, or a Nasus, or a Vega, or if they just genuinely have a lot of projectiles like an Ornn ultimate or something like that to block out of the way. He's very good against Zyra. She's not picked as much, but she blocks the feathers in front. He's a very good delaying champion, and he makes the fights last a lot longer than the enemy would sometimes like it to. So if you can identify that maybe opportunity, then it can be a very nice pick. Morgana is still S tier, just about. I feel like she has potential to make really nice plays with her Black Shield. Her bindings are extremely deadly, and her ulti is viable, particularly if she's ahead as well with Zhonya's. I feel like the only thing that's keeping her there is Black Shield, and there just are a couple of things that you can Black Shield, particularly against heavy physical damage dealing comps. Your Black Shield's going to stay on there a lot longer, so it's going to block a lot more physical stuns and things like that. I think if you start picking it into heavy mage comps, you're going to have it. The shield just does not last for anything, really. It gets popped super quick and easy, and it's not even a tool that even gets really used in your kit at all. So bear that in mind. But she is quite nice against heavy AD teams, like with a maximum of like 1 magic damage dealer on an enemy team. So that's something to consider. Now, Brand is a champion that has been slightly affected by this patch. Liandry's has had a 0.5% increase in burn damage as a flat, including the extra slow. So that slow is still going to be, it's not going to be doubled, but it's going to be an extra 0.5% still on damage increase. So yes, Liandry's has been buffed ever so slightly at a cost of 5 ability power. So against particularly more tanky players, you will be noticing slightly more damage. I don't think it's a game changer. I think these champions were particularly strong anyway, and I personally would still go Oblivion Orb first anyway, as it will affect the burn effect as well, as that is magic damage as well. But it's a nice little buff. Brand and one of the other champions above in the list will be getting a little bit more loving. Whether it's justified or not, I'm not particularly sure. I think it seems like this whole season has been Riot's been scared of tanks a lot, and even when tanks aren't showing up, they don't want them in the game. It almost seems like. I find it very strange. This whole season's been, for me, balancing wise, has been very, very strange, but it is what it is. And lastly, there we've got Rakan. Rakan, he has a tough time during laning phase unless you actually manage to land a clutch W and then quickly be able to escape. You kind of are relying on level 3 as well, unless you're doing a level 1 cheese. The main reason why Rakan's on this list is just purely his ultimate is just extremely deadly. His ultimate is extremely deadly when you pull off like a massive 3 charm and then you channel that into a W and then you get out of there, and it sets up a lovely AoE for your team. As long as you've got AoE in your team, Rakan works perfectly. He does really fit a AoE team so nicely. Sometimes it's not always to be the best to be the first one to engage. Sometimes it's just the way it is that you have to. But if you can just flank in, round them all up, and set your team up for like a really nice Orianna ulti, for example, or Rumble ult, it just aligns everything up so nicely. So we get to the S+ tier, tier 1. And now we have 5 people up there now. And a couple of these champions have received buffs as well. So we've got Pyke, Zyra, Nami, Thresh, and Soraka. Those, in my opinion, are the best champions to increase your ELO and solo queue. I was going to move down Pyke down to S. He is seeing a lot less play lately, and people feel like he's too squishy for the amount of damage he deals. Riot have instantly answered this with basically Riot have answered this by increasing the damage of his ultimate at level 1 by 50. This is massive. This is a massive buff into what Pyke's kit already gives. Now, this is the equivalent of Pyke essentially getting a BF sword at level 6 just for his ultimate, which is pretty damn huge. So if you're against squishy people bot side, as soon as you hit 6, you have 20% more damage on your ulti to get that execute off. And the amount of times that people have been outside my ult range by about 10 or 20 HP has been a huge amount. So this is gonna help quite a bit. So big buff for Pyke this patch coming. It will make it so that Aftershock as well is slightly more viable because it's just a flat base damage, not an AD ratio buff. So it's just a flat 50 damage on level 1. So it does mean that Aftershock is going to be a little bit more viable as well. I personally would have liked to have seen it as an AD ratio scaling up a little bit better on the ultimate. But hey, we'll see where this goes. I think it means that Aftershock Pyke might be actually the one to go for now, because you don't need to try and squeeze out every little bit of damage now on everything across the board, because 50 damage it doesn't sound like a lot maybe to some people, but it is a massive buff. Zyra, still very, very, very good. I'm reading the comment section on the last video. People were saying thank you for the Zyra suggestion, and even in Twitch chat, people thanking me for the Zyra suggestion. That has probably been affecting people the most. So if you haven't tried that yet, I would highly recommend it. I highly doubt she's going to be changed at all until the end of the season. So if you're getting closer towards a tier jump up, maybe from silver to gold, bronze to silver, Zyra will probably give you a good kick up to be honest, if you were wanting to get closer towards those end of season rewards. With the Leandry buff coming in as well, it's never been a better time to play Zyra support, in all honesty. She's going to be particularly strong mid game onwards, and especially around those objectives as well. Nami's been there for a while. Athene's Unholy Grail still unchanged, and it's primarily the reason why she's up here. Incredibly strong. Bubbles are hard to land, but I've got plenty of coaching sessions on my YouTube channel to guide you how to play Nami effectively pretty nicely. She's my most played support this season, I believe, on EU West, at least anyway. She is probably my favorite champion to play, so I might be a little bit biased here, but her Unholy Grail heals are off the charts, literally off the charts. It's insane. So when you go into combat with someone, always make sure and if you have no charges on your Athene's Unholy Grail, always try and W an enemy to build up those charges, and then it will bounce back onto an ally. And because of how the AP conversion ratio goes as well, once you get enough AP, I believe it's 200 AP, any extra AP above that, extra bounces will actually heal and damage more. So it's always more beneficial to try and land a W on an enemy first and then get the heal bounce onto an ally that way. Thresh has received... It is a big buff. It's kind of a weird buff, but it is a big buff. So his hook has been reduced from 80 mana to 60 mana, and his level 1, level 2 hooks have been reduced significantly, but the when you put 5 points in a hook, it's the same as it used to be. I personally feel like he didn't need a mana cost reduction anyway. He doesn't really go lane, so this is kind of like a trivial buff on the mana sense anyway. So for me, that mana on the Q reduction it's just nothing. It's just there. It's not a huge deal. Now, the interesting one is the cooldown reduction, particularly in level 1 hook, because what I personally would do as Thresh, say if you're, for example, you're against a Morgana Black Shield is 20-second cooldown, and before this patch, Thresh's hook was 20 seconds as well. So generally, you would have no window of opportunity to engage onto the Morgana unless you put points in Q, which would then reduce your cooldown of your Q. So if Morgana uses the Black Shield to dodge your hook, then you got about a 10-second window to throw out your hook and then follow up from there on. But now, because they've reduced the cooldown of the hook level 1, it does bring up those windows of opportunities out a little bit more. So generally, more often than not now, you would want to put points in E regardless. And I think they kind of reiterated that as well with the previous patch as well, by buffing the E damage as well. So more than ever now, putting points in E is 95% of the way to go now. So yeah, really big buff for Thresh in terms of his hook. And now you don't really have to choose whether you go E, Q or E. Riot basically telling you, you're probably going to want to put all your points in E first now. I think they're trying to spell it out to everyone. So yeah, put points in E first. You see the higher DPS increase, and now the hook's on a slightly reduced cooldown as well anyway, with no points in it. It's fabulous. And lastly, we have Soraka. Soraka, the bane of most people. Incredibly good heals. Silence can be devastating. Her ulti can be extremely annoying, even when you're not even affected her by the lane. On the other side, if your top laner gets healed by a Soraka heal, it can change the lane completely as well. Just requires a little bit of map awareness on how your other lanes are going when you hit level 6. But yeah, she's a very solid champion, very good harassment in lane as well. Scales nicely into mid game and late game with just pure heal. Yeah, pretty standard, easy to learn how to play champion, and has incredibly good base ratios on everything. Well, hopefully this tier list helps you out. Remember, it's just a guide. You obviously are entitled to your own opinion in chat in the comment section down below, and let me know what you think. I think this is one of the last patches now until Worlds coming out soon, so we'll see what they bring out at Worlds and the competitions, and who knows, they might pick out something very unique that I haven't thought of on this tier list. But this generally will suit 99% of you for solo queue as you're ranking up from bronze to low diamond. Well, good luck in your solo queue games, guys. I know a couple of you are trying to get to gold for the end season rewards, and I wish you the best of luck with that. And yeah, I'll be back hopefully in 2 to 3 weeks with another tier list, and keep you guys updated on what to keep playing on to make sure you try and get those end of season rewards as easily as possible. Don't forget you can catch me live on www.twitch.tv/Bizzleberry. I'm live every evening, 6 PM UK time until about 9. And on weekends, I'm live a little bit longer. Usually I'm live mid-afternoon onwards until late. Don't forget I've got coaching sessions as well on my channel as well. Like if you need help there, I've got about 25 plus coaching sessions now, I believe now, from all sorts of champions. So if you need help there, then feel free to browse and have a look there. Good luck in solo queue, guys.